Welcome to Globewise Entertainment, your go-to destination for untold stories from Hollywood's golden age and beyond. In today's video, we'll dive deep into the lives of 5 legendary stars from the golden era of cinema who, despite their fame and fortune, ended their lives in solitude and were tragically forgotten by the very world that once adored them. This is just the first part of a story that showcases the darker side of stardom. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to rediscover these stars you may have never truly known. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss any of our deep dives into the forgotten legends of Hollywood. Let's get started. 1. Mary Astor, 1906 to 1987. The star who wrote her own goodbye. Once hailed as one of Hollywood's most refined leading ladies, Mary Astor rose to stardom in the silent film era and achieved acclaim with an Academy Award for The Great Lie, 1941. Audiences knew her as the sophisticated, mysterious beauty in films like The Maltese Falcon, where she starred opposite Humphrey Bogart. But behind the camera, Mary's life was fraught with turmoil. Her personal struggles became tabloid fodder during a scandalous custody battle in the 1930s. Where her private diary was used against her in court. Despite the humiliation, she persevered, rebuilding her career with dignity. Yet fame has a cruel way of forgetting its pioneers. In her later years, Mary retired from acting and withdrew from Hollywood. She found solace in writing, penning a best-selling memoir and several novels, but even her words couldn't shield her from the quiet that awaited. As health issues mounted, she moved into the motion picture and television Country House, a retirement facility for former industry workers. She died in 1987, at age 81, with no fanfare, no flashing bulbs, just a quiet room and fading memories of a golden past. The world had long moved on, but for those who remember, Mary Astor's brilliance still flickers on screen. 2. Claudette Colbert, 1903 to 1996. Claudette Colbert, the star who lived in silence. Once hailed as one of the most dazzling actresses of Hollywood's golden age, Claudette Colbert lit up the screen with a signature blend of charm, wit, and elegance. She became a household name after her Oscar-winning performance in It Happened One Night, 1934, and went on to star alongside icons like Clark Gable and Frederick March. For years, she was among the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood, a glamorous figure with a flawless smile and unmatched comedic timing. But as the film industry evolved and roles for aging women disappeared, Colbert slowly slipped out of the spotlight. She left Hollywood behind in the late 1960s, retreating to her secluded home in Barbados. There, the applause faded into the sound of the ocean, and the cameras never returned. Claudette lived her later years in almost complete privacy. No fanfare, no red carpets, and few visitors. When she passed away in 1996 at the age of 92, many were surprised to learn she had still been alive at all. Her death, like her final decades, was quiet. A legend in her time, Claudette Colbert's legacy remains in the black and white glow of classic cinema, but her final chapter unfolded far from the world that once adored her. 3. Rudolph Valentino, 1895 to 1926. The tragic end of Rudolph Valentino, the first Hollywood heartthrob. In the 1920s, no man captivated audiences like Rudolph Valentino. With smoldering eyes and exotic charm, he became the silver screen's first true sex symbol, earning titles like The Great Lover and The Latin Lover. His roles in films like The Sheik and Blood and Sand turned him into a global icon, adored by millions. But fame came at a steep price. Behind the glamour, Valentino lived a life of emotional turbulence. He endured 2 failed marriages, was often ridiculed by the press, and faced cruel attacks on his masculinity. Despite his fame, he longed for true companionship and struggled with deep loneliness. In August 1926, at just 31 years old, Valentino collapsed and was rushed to a New York hospital. He suffered from a perforated ulcer and developed peritonitis. The world watched in shock as their beloved idol slipped into a coma. Though fans crowded the streets in mourning, no close family stood at his side. Rudolph Valentino died alone, young, adored, yet painfully isolated. His funeral drew tens of thousands, sparking riots and hysteria. But as time passed, the world moved on. His name, once synonymous with desire and stardom, faded into the dusty reels of silent cinema. He lived for love on screen, but died without it in life. 4. Jean Harlow, 1911 to 1937. Jean Harlow, the tragic flame who burned too bright. She was Hollywood's first platinum blonde, a dazzling starlet who redefined sex appeal in the 1930s. Jean Harlow lit up the screen with films like Hell's Angels, Red Dust, and Dinner at 8, becoming the embodiment of glamour and sensuality. But behind the laughter and allure was a young woman burdened by a troubled family, failed marriages, and the crushing demands of fame. At just 26 years old, Harlow fell gravely ill during the filming of Saratoga. What many thought was exhaustion or the flu turned out to be acute kidney failure. On June 7, 1937, Jean Harlow died in a hospital bed, surrounded not by friends or family, but by studio handlers and doctors, her mother refusing certain treatments out of misguided spiritual beliefs. The world mourned her beauty, but few truly knew her pain. She was buried in a white gown she had once worn on screen, resting in a crypt purchased by William Powell, the man she had loved but never married. The girl who made the world laugh died quietly, her stardom fading as quickly as it had ignited. Jean Harlow was gone, but not forgotten. 5. William Holden, 1918 to 1981. A star's final fade. William Holden was once one of Hollywood's brightest lights, a rugged, charismatic actor who captivated audiences in Sunset Boulevard, Stalag 17, and Bridge on the River Kwai. He won an Academy Award and was one of the highest-paid actors of his time, exuding a masculine charm that made him both a critical and box office favorite. But behind the fame was a man wrestling with inner demons. By the 1970s, Holden's battle with alcoholism was no secret in Hollywood. Once a leading man, his career slowed, and his personal relationships, especially with fellow actress Stephanie Powers, became strained by his drinking. In November 1981, William Holden was found dead in his Santa Monica apartment. He had slipped on a rug while intoxicated, hit his head on a table, and bled to death. He lay there alone for days before anyone discovered his body. The man who had once captivated millions with his on-screen presence died in silence. No crowds, no cameras, no final curtain call. Despite his lonely death, Holden left behind a legacy of unforgettable performances. Today, his name may not echo like it once did, but his talent remains immortal on film. 6. Clara Bow, 1905 to 1965. The it girl who faded into silence. In the roaring 1920s, Clara Bow was Hollywood's brightest flame. With wild red curls, a Brooklyn accent, and raw, magnetic energy, she became the original it girl, a flapper icon who embodied youth, rebellion, and desire. Audiences adored her, and by the age of 21, she was the top box office draw in America. But fame came at a steep cost. Clara's personal life unraveled under the weight of scandals, betrayals, and relentless press intrusion. She battled anxiety, mental breakdowns, and a deep fear of being used. As talking pictures replaced silent films, her voice, unrefined and unpolished, was mocked by critics. Hollywood moved on. By 1933, Clara walked away from acting and the limelight, marrying cowboy actor Rex Bell and moving to a ranch in Nevada. Though she tried to find peace, years of trauma lingered. Her marriage grew strained, and mental illness returned in later life. In 1965, Clara Bao died of a heart attack in a modest Los Angeles apartment, alone, far from the flashing lights and adoring crowds that once chased her every move. She was only 60. Once the face of an entire generation, she left this world in near silence. Forgotten by many, but never replaceable, Clara Bao was the spirit of the jazz age. 7. Lon Chaney Jr., 1906 to 1973, the monster who faded into the shadows. He was born into legacy. His father, Lon Chaney Jr., was Hollywood's original man of 1,000 faces. Lon Chaney Jr. followed in those heavy footsteps, carving his own place in horror history as the Wolf Man, 1941, and later portraying nearly every major universal monster. But behind the monster makeup was a man trapped by it. Hollywood never let Chaney Jr. escape the shadow of his iconic roles. Typecast and often overlooked for serious parts, he turned to alcohol to cope with personal and professional frustrations. As the horror boom faded, so did offers. He ended up in low-budget films and TV cameos, flickering reminders of what once was. By the time he died in 1973, ravaged by years of illness and addiction, he was living in a small house in San Clemente, California. No crowds. No headlines. No fanfare. The man who once terrified millions died quietly, his legacy buried under layers of latex and loneliness. Today, only horror enthusiasts and classic film lovers speak his name, but the monsters he gave life to will never die. 8. Greta Garbo, 1905 to 1990. The forgotten legend, Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo, the epitome of allure and mystery, captivated the world during the golden years of Hollywood. Known for her roles in Camille, 1936, and Grand Hotel, 1932, Garbo was more than just an actress, she was an icon. Her delicate beauty, coupled with her intense, often melancholic performances, made her one of the greatest stars of the silent and early talkie era. But behind the glamorous image and the adoring fans, Garbo was a private soul, longing for peace away from the spotlight. By the late 1930s, at the peak of her fame, she decided to retire, withdrawing from the public eye when she was just 36 years old. She sought solace in a quiet life, far from the cameras and the never-ending demands of Hollywood. Fans and media alike were left wondering why the elusive Garbo had left it all behind. As the years passed, the Garbo myth continued to grow. She became a symbol of Hollywood's glamour and mystique, a star who had chosen solitude over fame. Yet, despite her legendary status, her final years were marked by a life lived in near total isolation. In 1990, Greta Garbo passed away at the age of 84 in New York City. Despite her former grandeur, she was largely alone in her final days. She had no public funeral, and her death was met with little fanfare in the media compared to the overwhelming tributes that accompanied other stars of her era. Her reclusive lifestyle had kept her from forming lasting relationships in her later years, and when she died, it was quietly and without the global outpouring one might expect for someone of her stature. Garbo's story is one of bittersweet irony. She was adored by millions for her on-screen presence, but in the end, it was her desire for privacy that left her forgotten by most. In a world where the brightest stars often burn out quickly and loudly, Greta Garbo's legacy remains as enigmatic and silent as her final years. Though her name may not have echoed in the headlines in her final days, the magic of Garbo lives on, immortalized in the films she left behind, her aura of mystery and allure never truly forgotten. 9. George Sanders, 1906 to 1972. The star who died alone and forgotten. George Sanders was once one of Hollywood's most suave and charming stars. With his aristocratic demeanor, sharp wit, and distinguished voice, he was the epitome of elegance on screen. Known for his roles in All About Eve, 1950, for which he won an Academy Award, and The Picture of Dorian Gray, 1945, Sanders captured the hearts of audiences with his unforgettable performances. But behind the scenes, Sanders struggled with a sense of emptiness. Despite his success, he was a man plagued by loneliness. Married 4 times, his personal life was riddled with failed relationships, and he never seemed to find true happiness. His charm and wit, so evident in his films, couldn't shield him from his inner turmoil. As the years went on, Sanders' career slowly faded. His roles became fewer, and he was no longer the leading man. By the 1970s, he had moved to a quiet life in London, living in relative obscurity. Few outside of his past circle of friends remembered him, and the once gilded Hollywood star was now an afterthought. In 1972, George Sanders was found dead in his apartment, the victim of an apparent suicide. He had been alone in the final moments of his life, his passing going unnoticed for several days. His death was as quiet and solitary as the life he had come to lead in his final years. Though he was a celebrated actor in his prime, Sanders' story is a tragic reminder of how fame can sometimes leave a lasting void. The world had long since forgotten the man who once captured hearts on the big screen, but his legacy lives on through the unforgettable roles he played. George Sanders, elegant, charismatic, but ultimately alone, was a star who faded into obscurity, his name a whisper in the pages of Hollywood history. 10. Barbara Payton, 1927–1967. The tragic tale of Barbara Payton, a golden age star who died alone and forgotten. Once hailed as one of Hollywood's most promising young stars, Barbara Payton's meteoric rise to fame was overshadowed by her tumultuous personal life, leaving her ultimately forgotten by the world she once dazzled. Born in 1927, Barbara quickly captured the attention of movie studios with her striking beauty and sultry screen presence. She was cast opposite some of Hollywood's biggest names, including Gregory Peck, and starred in films like Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, 1950. However, her rise to stardom was marred by reckless decisions, public scandals, and a volatile love life. Her marriages were short-lived, and her relationships with men, most infamously with actor Frank Tone and then with his close friend, the famous star, and her lover, were filled with drama and passion. Yet, it was her infamous affair with actor Tom Neal that led to a scandalous altercation in which both ended up embroiled in a violent feud. Soon, she was labeled as trouble. With her personal life making headlines for all the wrong reasons, Barbara's career began to slip, and soon, she was struggling to land roles. Alcoholism, financial troubles, and a growing sense of isolation took their toll. Her once promising career had dwindled, leaving her in the shadows of Hollywood. In the years that followed, Barbara's decline became even more pronounced. By the mid-1960s, she had hit rock bottom, living in squalor, dealing with addiction, and far from the glitz and glamour that once defined her life. On August 8, 1967, she was found dead in a rundown motel in San Diego, just 39 years old. Her body was discovered 2 days later. No one was there to mourn her, no family, no friends, no Hollywood colleagues. Today, Barbara Payton is a name mostly forgotten, a beautiful face that once graced the big screen but fell victim to the darker side of fame. Her tragic end serves as a poignant reminder of how fleeting the brightness of Hollywood can be, and how quickly even the most dazzling stars can fade into obscurity. Barbara's story is a tragic chapter in the annals of Hollywood history, a cautionary tale of fame's allure and the dangers of falling too far into its grip. And that wraps up part 1 of our look into the lives of golden age stars who died alone and forgotten. These stories remind us that even the brightest lights in Hollywood can fade into the shadows, but here at Globewise Entertainment, we believe their legacies still matter. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Globewise Entertainment and tap the notification bell so you don't miss part 2 and more untold stories from the heart of Hollywood history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.